Tonight, we walk not through the thunder of battles or the rush of war, but through the quiet, patient life of a man who was born with the weight of a kingdom on his shoulders and yet spent most of his years with no crown at all. His name was Aragorn, son of Arathorn, heir to the throne of Gondor, but for most of his life, he was known only as a ranger, a wanderer, a ghost in the wild. He was raised in secret, hunted by shadows, torn between love and duty, and crowned only after the world had nearly fallen into darkness. What if I told you that the future king once dug ditches in disguise, that he chased a wretched creature for years to protect a secret he barely understood, and that the fate of all Middle-earth rested not on his sword, but on a choice he made in silence, alone in the dark? This is not a story of glory told with trumpets. It is a story of endurance told with whispers. A tale of a man who learned to walk so softly that even the darkness couldn't hear him coming. If this gentle journey through the life of Aragorn calls to you, take a moment to subscribe to Little Historical. It helps a small channel continue to bring stories that deserve to be told slowly, with the time they need to settle. And if you are watching from somewhere far away, let me know in the comments. There is comfort in knowing that others are drifting through Middle-earth beside you, carried by the same words, the same silence, the same soft turning of a world toward rest. Now, dim the lights, perhaps a blanket, and let us begin. The story of Aragorn begins not with triumph, but with loss. Long before the Fellowship, before the battles of Helm's Deep or the crowning in Gondor, there was a broken kingdom in the north and a child born into danger. His father, Arathorn II, was the chieftain of the Dúnedain, the last remnants of the once great kingdom of Honor. They wandered the wilderness, hunted by orcs and shadowed by the growing darkness in the east. When Aragorn was only 2 years old, his father led a hunting party against orcs and was killed by a stray arrow. His mother, Gilran, fearing for her son's life, took him to the only place where the shadows could not yet reach, Rivendell. There, in the hidden valley of the elves, Elrond received the boy. But he knew the danger. If Sauron learned that Isildur's heir still lived, the child would be hunted without mercy. So Aragorn's name was concealed. He would be known only as Estel, which in the Elvish tongue means hope. Under starlight and silence, a king was raised in secret. No throne, no crown. Only the legacy of a broken sword and the burden of a destiny that had waited over 3,000 years. The world would forget his name. But it was in that forgetting that Aragorn's legend began. He would rise not through prophecy, but through quiet suffering. The last flame of Númenor, flickering in the dark. In the halls of Rivendell, hidden behind waterfalls and ancient trees, Aragorn lived a life unlike any child of men. He knew nothing of swords or crowns or the burden that would one day break him or make him. To him, Elrond was not a lord, but a father. The elves were not guardians of an ancient world, but kind voices that echoed like song in the twilight. The forests were his playground, the stars his companions, and his name was Estel, Hope. His mother, Gilran, watched him with silent sorrow. She loved him dearly, but the weight of what he must become haunted her eyes. Though she never told him the truth, she knew her time with him as a child was fleeting. Elrond had warned her, his path will be hard. If he survives it, he will be alone more often than not. So she let him run barefoot through gardens of light, let him laugh among the elves, knowing each laugh was borrowed from fate. But Estel was no ordinary boy. He was keen of mind, swift of foot, and quiet in spirit. The elves noted something ancient in his gaze, as though the wisdom of many lives had settled in his bones. He listened more than he spoke, and often wandered the libraries of Rivendell, lost among stories of heroes, wars, and kingdoms long fallen to dust. There was one story he always returned to, the tale of Isildur, the man who cut the ring from Sauron's hand and then failed to destroy it. Estel did not know that Isildur's blood ran through his veins, but something in the tale stirred him, both awe and unease. By his 20th year, the whispers among the elves grew. He learns too quickly, they said. He has the heart of a king. Elrond watched quietly, holding back the truth like a dam before a flood. Then one evening, he summoned Estel to a high chamber lit only by candlelight and memory. No guards, no ceremony, just the elf lord and the young man he had raised like a son. What followed would shatter the world Estel thought he knew. Elrond spoke gently, but his words fell like thunder. You are Aragorn, son of Arathorn, heir of Isildur, the last of the Dúnedain, the true king of Gondor and Arna." The silence that followed was vast. Estel, Aragorn, could barely breathe. A king. Him. The blood of Isildur coursed through his veins. The same Isildur who failed to destroy the ring. Then came more. Elrond handed him the Ring of Barahir, a relic of ancient Númenor once worn by kings. Then the shards of Narsil, the broken sword that had cut the ring from Sauron's hand. The blade was shattered, just like the kingdom it once ruled. With shaking hands, Aragorn took the hilt. Cold, heavy, and full of unspoken promises. "You have not come to the end of your journey," Elrond said. "You have only just begun." When he left that chamber, he was not the same man. Estel was gone. Aragorn had awakened. And the long road of the Ranger was about to begin. When Estel left that chamber, he was not the same man. Estel was gone. Aragorn had awakened. And the long road of the Ranger was about to begin. But before he could walk that road, fate placed one more obstacle before him. One far more complicated than orcs or blades or the shadow in the east. Her name was Arwen. She had returned from Lothlorien not long before. Daughter of Elrond, granddaughter of Galadriel, the Evenstar of her people. Immortal, radiant, untouched by time or sorrow. They met beneath the golden trees of Rivendell as the sun filtered through ancient branches. Aragorn, no longer a boy, now stood in his full height, young, uncertain, with a fire in his spirit. And Arwen saw it. She looked upon him as one might a curious flame, something wild and fleeting. But the more they spoke, the more that flame grew. He spoke to her not as a subject to royalty, but as a man who knew how fragile life truly was. Every glance he gave her carried the weight of time he didn't have. Arwen, centuries older, saw something rare in him, mortality wrapped in courage. And slowly, against both tradition and reason, she began to care. They walked together through Rivendell's quiet groves, speaking of stars, old songs, and what lies beyond the sea. But love in Middle-earth never comes without price. When Elrond learned of their growing bond, his heart grew heavy. "She is of the Eldar," he said to Aragorn. "You are of the race of men. Her fate is bound to the undying lands. Yours to death." Aragorn said nothing, but deep within a war had begun. How could he ask her to forsake eternity for a mortal life of hardship and war? How could he not, when every step away from her felt like tearing a piece from his own soul? He made no promises to Arwen. Not yet. But the seed was planted, and it would bloom over many long years in hope, in sorrow, and in waiting. Then at last Aragorn turned from the valley that raised him. With only a broken sword, a heavy heart, and a future carved in shadow, he left Rivendell behind. And so began the long road of the Ranger, not as a prince, not as a hero, but as a man already at war with the world, with his bloodline, and with his heart. The world did not welcome him. Beyond the safety of Rivendell, Middle-earth was cracking under the weight of growing darkness. Aragorn walked into this chaos with no army, no followers, only a broken lineage and a silent vow. He would not claim the throne by blood. He would earn it in exile. Disguised beneath cloak and hood, he took no titles. He became a wanderer, a huntsman, a ghost in the wild. To most, he was simply a man named Strider, worn, grim, and watchful. Few knew that the man sleeping in mud beneath the trees was the rightful king of Gondor. But that was how he wanted it. He traveled far across the windswept plains of Rohan, through the tangled woods of Mirkwood, down into the sun-scorched lands of Harad. In every corner of Middle-earth, he left a footprint. Sometimes as a guide, sometimes as a soldier, always as a shadow. He learned the tongues of many lands, the customs of kings and peasants alike. He hunted beasts that should have been legends. He defended villages that would never know his name. And in every quiet act, in every battle survived, he carved away the uncertainty within him. This was no prince on a quest. This was a man forging himself in fire. Yet he was never truly alone. The Dúnedain, the rangers of the north, men of his own bloodline, still roamed the wild. They watched, waited, and guarded the land in secret. Slowly, quietly, Aragorn became their leader. Not by declaration, but by action. Even in obscurity, his legend began to form. Children in Bree whispered about the tall man with the sharp eyes. Orcs learned to fear the ranger with the silent step. In the corners of taverns, his name passed in low voices. Strider, the man who always walked alone but never fell. But Aragorn did not seek glory. He was chasing something deeper. He was chasing worth. Because only by walking the long, brutal road of the forgotten could he ever hope to be the king the world had lost. And as he walked, the memory of Arwen stayed with him, a quiet star in the darkness of his exile, reminding him why he endured. And as he walked, the memory of Arwen stayed with him, a quiet star in the darkness of his exile, reminding him why he endured. But while Aragorn wandered through the wilds of Middle-earth, testing his body and spirit in countless small wars, Arwen remained in Rivendell, caught between her father's wisdom and her own heart. She watched the seasons pass, each one a reminder that the man she loved was aging while she did not. Elrond saw the sorrow in her eyes, the way she lingered near the eastern windows, as if her gaze alone could bring him home. He tried to reason with her. "There is no future for you here," he told her. "He will die. You will not. And then you will be left alone in a world that grows strange." But Arwen had already made her choice. She returned to Lothlorien, where time moved slower, to think under the golden malorn trees. There she walked with her grandmother, Galadriel, who looked into her heart and saw what even Arwen herself had not fully admitted. "You have already chosen," Galadriel said. "Your heart left with him the day he walked out of Rivendell." In that sacred place, surrounded by the fading light of the elves, Arwen finally spoke the words that would bind her fate. She would not sail west to the undying lands. She would stay in Middle-earth. She would become mortal. She would love Aragorn until death parted them, and then she would die. It was not a decision made lightly. It was not a romantic fantasy. She knew what she was giving up: the endless years, the beauty of Valinor, her father's presence, her people's songs. She knew that one day she would watch Aragorn grow old and frail, that his death would leave her a widow in a world that would slowly forget the elves. And still she chose him. Not because he was a king, not because he was a hero, but because in his eyes she had seen a depth that no immortal could offer, the courage to love when time was short, to give everything knowing that loss was certain. Her choice was quiet, resolute, and irreversible. She did not announce it with trumpets. She simply told Galadriel, then returned to Rivendell and looked eastward with new patience. Aragorn did not know. For years, he had refused to ask her for a promise. He would not be the one to take her immortality. But now, without his knowledge, she had already laid it at his feet. When at last he returned to Rivendell, battered and weary, he found her waiting for him, not as a princess awaiting a prince, but as a woman who had already paid the price for their love. And in that moment, Aragorn understood the weight of what she had done. He could not undo it. He could only strive to be worthy of it. Their love became not a distraction, but a quiet fire that burned beneath every battle, every mile, every sacrifice. He would carry her choice with him to the Black Gate, to the crown, to the very end. And she would carry him in her heart until the last leaf fell in Lothlorien. He would carry her choice with him to the Black Gate, to the crown, to the very end. And she would carry him in her heart until the last leaf fell in Lothlorien. But before Aragorn could become king, he had to walk through the Valley of the Shadow. The War of the Ring was not won in a single battle, but in 1,000 small acts of courage and one great act of desperation. When the Fellowship broke at Amorn Hen, when Boromir fell and Frodo vanished, Aragorn made a choice that would define his reign long before he wore a crown. He did not chase the ring into Mordor. He chose to save Merry and Pippin. He chose hope over certainty. And in that choice, he became a leader not of blood, but of trust. He ran for 3 days across the plains of Rohan, hunted orcs with Legolas and Gimli, and rode with the Rohirrim to Helm's Deep. In the rain and the mud, with the walls crumbling and the enemy endless, Aragorn fought not as a king, but as a shield for the helpless. He did not speak of his lineage. He spoke only of survival. When the dawn came and Gandalf brought the riders, Aragorn stood bloody and exhausted, but he did not rest. There was still a greater darkness to face. He took the paths of the dead, a road so haunted that even the elves refused to speak of it. The dead did not suffer the living to pass. But Aragorn was Isildur's heir. He walked into the mountain, alone except for his companions, and faced the ghosts of oathbreakers who had fled their duty centuries ago. They surrounded him, cold and hollow, whispering of their curse. Aragorn raised Anduril, the reforged sword, and spoke not as a supplicant, but as a king. "I summon you to fulfill your oath." The dead hesitated. They had waited so long. But there was something in his voice, not magic, but authority earned in exile. They followed. With that ghostly army, he sailed up the Anduin, broke the siege of Minas Tirith, and turned the tide of the Pelennor fields. Yet even then, he knew the war would not end until the ring was destroyed. So he marched to the Black Gate with a handful of soldiers, a fool's hope. He stood before the armies of Mordor, outnumbered beyond measure, and gave Frodo the last minutes he needed. When the ring fell and the Dark Tower crumbled, Aragorn did not celebrate. He knelt in the dust, weeping for those who had fallen. Then he walked into Minas Tirith and was crowned king, not because he wanted power, but because he had earned the right to serve. He ruled for 120 years, healing the wounds of war, rebuilding the kingdom, and planting the White Tree anew. He married Arwen in the spring, and for a time there was peace. But the gift of men is mortality. When Aragorn felt his time approaching, he laid down his life in the House of Kings. Arwen, who had given up eternity for him, walked alone to the withered woods of Lothlorien and died of grief. Their love outlasted the world they saved. And in the quiet of history, where only whispers remain, the story of the ranger who became king still echoes.